Today we are talking all about the legendary team that is Williams. Now, they may not be legendary in their current setup on the grid, at least right now, but in terms of their car design, there is something very unique about these Williams cars compared to everybody else on the grid. So without further ado, let's dive into it. So some eagle-eyed Formula 1 fans may have noticed something just a little different about the cockpit of George Russell and Nicholas Latifi's cars when compared to the rest of the Formula 1 pack. It's one of those things that once you see it, you can't really unsee it. The difference looks just superficial, but there may be a little extra added advantage for the manufacturer with this change, because isn't that why everything happens in Formula 1? To get those tiny advantages over everybody else. So, if you haven't noticed it yet, here it is. It's the dashboard in the cockpit of the Williams F1 car, and it's not actually attached to the steering wheel, but instead, uniquely, it's mounted on the chassis. In addition to this, the steering wheel is shaped a little differently. It's called a butterfly-shaped steering wheel because of its distinctive shape when compared to all the other manufacturers in Formula 1 who have a rectangular steering wheel that includes the dash mounted into it. At first glance, this seems to be a lot more convenient, but when Russell or Latifi steers to the left or right, the dashboard is no longer visible because the steering wheel is in the way. So why on earth does Williams choose to do this? Okay, so first let's go back to the early 1990s when digital dashboards were first introduced to Formula 1. These weren't much to look at compared to the modern day technological marvels that we see today. But at the time, they were mounted on the chassis by all teams. Slowly but surely, and with the ever more advanced techniques coming into the sport, the teams started to move these to the steering wheel itself. As a result, a lot of time and money was invested in developing a dashboard, which is why McLaren Applied Technologies introduced the LED dashboards in 2006. This was quickly adopted by the rest of the pack on the pit wall. In 2014, however, the well-known hybrid era began in Formula 1. Technically, this brought many changes with it. The FIA therefore found it both convenient and safe that the teams would be able to communicate more information to the driver via the dashboard. That's why the LCD dashboards as we know them today were introduced. Again, all teams decided to integrate this dashboard into the driver's steering wheel, aside from Williams. They chose to mount theirs on the chassis prior to the introduction of the new regulations. Now, exactly why the British racing driving stable chose to do this has never really become entirely clear. However, there is one theory that various Formula 1 experts and technicians think is the right one, and that's to do with weight. The Williams dashboard is said to weigh about 130 grams, which in principle means very little. However, Formula 1 cars are equipped with power steering. This means that every time a driver steers, some energy is drawn from the hydraulic system. In principle, a bit of power from the engine is therefore sacrificed. Less weight equals less power sacrificed. In 2013, just before the introduction of the new engine regulations, no one was quite sure how these hybrid power plants would play out in practice. Williams thought that if they took less energy from the hydraulic system, it could give them a little extra on the straight. It's all very minimal, but Formula 1 is all about finding those tiny gains to give yourself that advantage on the track and make the big difference. So in itself, it was actually a really good idea. Since Williams is still using this, it will undoubtedly bring some real profit as well. However, it doesn't seem to be a golden move either, because none of the other teams have adopted the idea. It probably now just comes down to style and personal preference at the end of the day. Former Williams CEO Paddy Lowe once said that a dashboard in the steering wheel is no longer readable when a driver turns the steering wheel left or right, but as we said earlier, the same can be said for the Williams car in its current mode of operation. The dashboard is just as unreadable when steering. Since the resulting profit is so small, nowadays it's probably more about the team's preference whether they have it mounted into the steering wheel or into the chassis. We may, with all the regulation changes coming in for 2022, see other teams go down the Williams route in the future of F1. But for now, the British constructor continues to be the only team on the grid rolling with the butterfly steering wheel. So let us know in the comments section below what you'd like us to dive into, and don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest news on and off the track here with GP Fans.